Boston's coming. He'll be in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, this feels much more comfortable. I don't know what happens. I went on your channel. I got very nervous. Now I'm back on mine. I'm comfortable.
It's like with anything in life, right? When you do something over and over, you're comfortable, and you try something new, you get nervous, but that's good for you.
Yeah, that's true. Of course. Yeah. But I don't know if that O'Connor one can be used. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully the rest can be useful.
It's so normally I don't talk like that, right? But this is kind of a debate that's building, and kind of there's kind of like this opposition that's becoming dramatized, and I think the audience kind of wants to hear some, unfettered opinions with passion, what you gave.
That's what we're about on this channel. For the audience to know, we were talking about Dr. Thomas O'Connor, who, as I hope all of my subscribers know, I always advise you guys not to watch that channel and not to follow. Now, Bostin and I, this is why we call this the non-fraudulent bodybuilding podcast. We say what we really feel here. Bostin and I, for the audience to know, Bostin and I, sometimes when we talk about people in our private messages, Bostin always says, this guy's a phony, that guy's a phony. We can sense if somebody has an act and if he has some ulterior motives or whatever. And from my side, I always look at people and see, is this guy providing either new information or really coherent information? And there are people like that. For the audience to know, you can follow Derek, you can follow Steve. There's a few people like that. Not Broderick Chavez, not Thomas O'Connor. There's some people that aren't like that. So I just want people to know, I advise against that. Not for any other reason. I mean, you can check out where he got his degrees from. I'm pretty sure Arizona State or something like that. And the guy is commercially driven. A real medical doctor who took a Hippocratic oath, whatever it's called, won't go and make a steroid channel. That's just not what they do. That's why one of the good things about not being a doctor is we can talk about these things.
That's what I try to tell people. Like they say, you're Tony Huge. You're not a medical doctor. You shouldn't be talking about medicine. And you know what I say? I say, you know who my tax advisor was? It wasn't a CPA, because a CPA can't tell you what to really do.
Yeah.
And when I want real medical advice, I don't go to a medical doctor who reports to a medical board. I want to hear from the scientists who are actually learning the science, not the ones who are being taught how to sell the drugs and how to maintain what I think is a really ineffective medical system.
That's true. I mean, that's what doctors are, unless you find an MD, PhD. Those guys are researchers who are really, and then sometimes you find a great practitioner, a surgeon, really good surgeon or something like that. But otherwise, I mean, I have 2 clients who are going to medical school right now. And I have many medical doctors follow the channel, and they'll tell you themselves, medical school is a memorization task. You memorize things that aren't always useful. And then after that, you don't get a chance to read academic papers. You don't have the time. In fact, I have a video called Why Medical Doctors are, I don't know what I said it, but unable to understand statistics. In fact, there are a lot of papers. I was taught in undergrad by my statistician professors. There's a major gap in knowledge of, like, medical doctors can't actually understand research papers. They can't understand the statistical part of the paper. So they have to go with the abstract and conclusions, and they also don't have time. Anyway, Bostin, how are you doing?
Well, I have to say, so because it sounds like I hate doctors. I just have to say, just like any profession, there's good and there's bad. And I also talk to a lot of doctors that are really amazing. But all the amazing doctors I talk to are equally frustrated with the system. They're equally frustrated that they can't tell their patients what will really help them because they'll get sued. They can't contradict the World Health Organization. They can't contradict the CDC. They have to follow all these government things. And then who's your doctor? Are you really have a doctor who's an individual who's giving you individual advice and care based on yourself? Or are you just getting advice that you could just get from the CDC and the WHO and these other health organizations and the physician's handbook that they all have to follow? Because that's how it was as I was a lawyer too. I mean, honestly,
it's all about liability.
If I could tell a friend how to beat the system legally, I would do that, but I could not tell my clients everything because you're not allowed to, because you have a license, and that's how they control you as a professional to control the people. That's how the control is passed down. That's so true. Bostin has a strong opinion on this. Bostin can't stand
what exactly?
Doctors, medical doctors, how useful they are.
Oh, yeah. Fuck them.
He just summarized our entire conversation in 2 words.
Told you, Boston is non-fraudulent. He says exactly what he thinks all the time. So Boston and I's texts are always like, this guy's a phony, that guy's a phony. Anyway, Tony, not everybody on my channel knows what happened to you. Can you summarize what happened to you recently? You got COVID, and you may have gotten did you get, for sure, the Delta variant?
Well, I had Rona before, and I built an immunity to it, and I could go into detail on why I know that. But let's just assume for the sake of the conversation, it's true. I had Rona before and I was immune. So how did I get it again? Either the immunity wears off, which I don't think so, because in this case, I got hit so hard I almost died. And last time I had it and I didn't even have any symptoms. The reason I know I had it is because I was actually trying to actively catch it, and I was around people with COVID, and I literally couldn't catch it from them. So at some point I must have had it. Otherwise this disease isn't really contagious. And
we're trying to catch COVID.
Yeah. I even did a video before I left America. When they interviewed me, because I said something extreme. I said, I'm going to Asia to catch COVID, because at the time it wasn't in the United States. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to go catch it, and I'm going to show everybody how easy it is to cure, so they don't have to worry about it. And a lot of my opinions about Rona at the time, because I was treating it like a flu virus, and actually it's very similar in how you can treat it early on. It was all accurate. I mean, it's funny. I did a video 5 years ago when I started the EA video, media channel and all that. And I was telling people how to beat the flu. Like, how can you beat the flu in 2 days? How can you beat the common cold in 2 days? And at the time I would post a video, and a video at the channel size it would get 10,000 views within the first day. And this video got 1,500 views. Nobody watched my video on how to build the immune system. And it was concise and it was awesome. Nobody cares. Still nobody cares. They still just want to put an injection in them or have a fast solution instead of actually building the immune system. And it's so annoying to me, because all these people are then bashing things like steroids and chemistry and all this stuff. But at the same time, they're not even taking care of their own immune system, which is far more significant than any of the risks that we cause ourselves by experimenting with chemistry. They have no relative context.
Did you get the vaccine?
I believe that the risks for me outweigh the benefits at this time. If there's a vaccine in the future that doesn't have so many chemicals that could be called toxic and doesn't have potentially long-term effects. I know, Leo, I think you got it.
But wait, let me explain.
So evaluated it.
Yeah, let me explain. I didn't get it because I believe in it. I got it. There's a couple. So first of all, similar thing happened to us, Tony. My wife.
Somebody texted me before you about that. I have to mention it. Somebody texted me. They're like, I'll tell you who it is when we get off. They're like, Leo, your co-host. He's such a liberal left-wing vaccinator.
I am not liberal. First of all, I am not liberal. Just to be clear to people, maybe when I was 20, I was. I don't want to be clear how conservative I am. I'm very conservative. Just to be clear, I'm very about liberty and freedom, and I really dislike the fact that they're trying to force people to take the vaccine. But let me tell you something interesting. So my wife got COVID. I mean, she got COVID about a year ago or so, and she had some symptoms, but they were minor. And I got a bit of brain fog, a bit of joint ache, the immune system, and then she got pregnant. In the pregnancy, she got the vaccine. Okay, this is why people are very antagonistic toward me. They're like, how did you let your wife? I don't own my wife. Okay, so the issue was my wife had a personal choice. She had a little bit of a bad response the first time. She thought that getting the vaccine may prevent her while she's pregnant if she got the virus from something very bad happen. Well, guess what? 2 months later, she got COVID and she ended up in the ICU this time. Just like what happened to you, severe issues. Now, she already had the vaccine. I imagine the vaccine must have, to some degree, got her immune system ready for it, so maybe it lessened the severity of it. She was pregnant, so it could have been disastrous. Now, I don't believe in the vaccine. To be honest, I got the vaccine because I want to go to the gym. I'm very resilient. My body's very resilient. I live in California. I can't go to the gym. I can't do things unless I have the vaccine.
Wait. I'm coming back to California. These are the rules?
Like, yeah, you can't technically
go to the gym?
That's the rule, but I didn't know this. I'm stupid. I got the vaccine. Then I go to the gym. I realize they don't ask you for the card. So I could have just not gotten the goddamn thing. Because I'm invulnerable to this thing.
Eventually they will, I think, though, Leo. Eventually, I think they're going to start making people
That's why I did it. Look, it's not that I believe. First of all, I didn't even research the vaccine much, and second of all, I really don't want people's freedoms infringed. Just to be clear, I'm not some left. Now, the reason why they say that is because Jerry Branham comes on my show, and Jerry Branham is very liberal. But in the last conversation, I admitted to. I told him, listen, I'm conservative. The vaccine is probably not causing that many problems to people, but the issue is freedom to choose. That's my issue. But anyways.
Bostin, did you get hit with the Rona? What's your V position?
Yeah, so I think I got it, man. Like, I didn't leave my house when I got it because I was so sick. But Leo, you remember I got real sick. Yeah. I was coughing like crazy. I had all the symptoms. I didn't get tested for it though. I don't fucking want the government to know that shit. So I just stayed home, and it lasted like 2 weeks. I was coughing my lungs up, and I felt like shit. But yeah, and then now I'm over it.
So guys, I want to do a couple of things here. Me and Bostin have a lot of questions from the subscribers that have accrued over time, and we have questions specifically for you, Tony. Wanted to go through them, but before we do, we haven't done. I don't know if you know this, Tony. On our podcast, we do these cycle critiques. Are you down to do a few with us?
Sure. Okay,
so I'm gonna try to share my screen, as technologically inept as I am. Okay, here we go. So maybe we'll start with this one. So. Here we go. So Dan Pack, who's a great subscriber, his name is Hip Azen on it. He says it's his first cycle. He wants to do HCG thrice a week, 300 up to 500 milligrams to get a good effect. He wants higher than 800 nanograms per deciliter. So he's going to rely on HCG for his testosterone. He's going to use 5 to 6 units of growth hormone two times a day for 10 to 12 weeks. And so he's interesting. So he's using HCG less, and probably 350 milligrams a week of methanolone. What is that? Do you guys know what that is?
No.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's D-ball. Oh wait, no, Primobolan.
Oh, is it Primo? Okay, yeah. And then he says the HCH is generic. I hope he's using Boston's generic, that one on the forum, because that one is great. And 5 milliliters of cerebrolysin, 5 times a week. Okay, what do you guys think of this as a first cycle? So basically, he's using that's his name.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
So is this all at the same time? I mean, he's trying to get he's trying to use the HCG while he's using the Primobolan.
Yeah, the reason why is in my
like testosterone foundation. That's
exactly
instead of taking testosterone.
Exactly. Yeah. I think this is
when he puts 300 up to 500 mg. Does he mean IU?
He means IU, yeah.
Yeah, IU, for sure.
Now, I don't think 300 to 500 is going to get him to 800 nanograms per deciliter, but I made a video recently, it's not out yet, about how to titrate up your HCG with blood tests to get it to a level that you want. Usually people will need like 1,000 units or so. By the way, you could measure it in milligrams.
Okay, I have a really good anecdotal report. I had a friend that was taking 500 units of HCG twice per week because his testicles were not producing testosterone. So the doctor actually gave him 500. I think it was 500. Maybe it was 500 every 5 days. I'd have to look back. But anyways, the point is the dosage was low, and that was able to get him from no testosterone up to normal testosterone or a little bit enhanced testosterone range. Because like his body wasn't producing luteinizing hormone type thing, so he was substituting it with the HCG. So I think that gives us sort of a normal baseline, and he's only looking for normal testosterone, but he's also taking Primo, which is also suppressive. Yeah. So how he's, counteracting that.
So I've seen, like, just to explain how potent HCG can be, I've seen people, I've had clients that used 1,500 IU every other day and got their nanograms per deciliter to 1,500. So it can go really high. So you may be right there. I like this Hip Azen.
I want 2,500 IU every other day for a pregnancy protocol.
Yeah, that's the half, by the way, Boston. That's the half the max dose in studies. Some use 5,000 every other day.
Well, no, my normal protocol is 5,000 every other day when I'm running a cycle. But since I'm only doing a little bit of TRT, I'm just doing 2,500.
I think this is cool. I would add MK677 so you get the full spectrum of growth hormone production, because you're replacing your growth hormone. You're going to turn off your growth hormone. And I assume he's using the cerebrolysin for cognitive effects, but that sounds fun.
So So with the HCG, he's kind of bypassing the axis. So, actually it's not going to matter so much that he's suppressing with the primobolan. But also, why not take more testosterone boosters, like natural testosterone boosters and thing as well. And then also a little bit of Clomid can help maintain testosterone levels. Like I always believed that, and I always took it while I was on cycle early on, just small, short bursts, because it also has side effects that accumulate.
Yeah.
So that's something else to consider as a testosterone.
Tony, don't you think this guy would get a lot better results if he didn't use HCG and used like 250 mgs of testosterone in replace of it?
Yeah, it's kind of like why. It's like you're already injecting Primo, which is a lot of oil, right? He's going to inject 3.5 cc's of Primo per week to get 350 milligrams. It's like, why not just make it 4 cc and add another 0.5 cc of testosterone, giving you 125 milligrams per week, which is a adequate TRT foundation for this.
Yeah, I'd rather do that.
So the one argument, I think, two arguments. So one, Tony, you mentioned a great point, which is that he needs to control estradiol if he wants to get the most out of the HCG. Estradiol is a big negative feedback indicator to the brain. So you would use Clomid or an AI, something like exemestane. And the second thing is, to be honest, I personally feel like the 350 milligrams of Primo is too low. Not too low, but I would personally use something a bit higher, unless it wasn't a cycle. Like if you were going long term, maybe you'd start at low dose, slowly titrate up. But I know that people like to use low doses recently. So I think we commented on that one. What does Kamote mean? Kamote Kid says 500 milligrams of Test E per week, year round, paired with a second compound at 250 milligrams per week, either equipoise or an NPP for 4 months on and off. He would prefer to use Primo at 500 milligrams per week year round, but it's not available. Oh, by the way, that's another point about the last one. One of the advantages of Primo, maybe for athletes, is they store less water, and Primo causes more erythropoiesis than testosterone. So I'm assuming maybe the last guy was some kind of athlete or something like that. But anyway, he says he wants to use Primo instead, but it's not available. That's not true. You should go to Bostin's forum. Anyone that's not subscribed to Bostin's forum, really, I wish I had that forum years ago. You can solve a lot of your problems. But adjusted according...
There's pharmaceutical grade Primo on there too. He ships worldwide. Yeah,
but don't you think this cycle is basically Dante's cycles for pennies? That's what that was. It's test with NPP, and you would switch off NPP and boldenone.
Is that what Dante's
dog crap? Yeah, Dante. That's what his thing was. That's the original article that made him quite well known.
It's funny, Tony. Me and you were looking at these cycles like, what the fuck? We're used to seeing cycles that are like 10 times the amount of this.
I know.
Yeah, and it's also really hard to know, like, what does he look like? What's his body weight? What's his experience? What's his goal? What is his risk tolerance? Why isn't he considering, like, why would I say the anabolic matrix, like other pathways to get to that goal? I always like lower testosterone dosages because I don't like having to use anything to mitigate the estrogen. And so if he can use 500 milligrams of test and he's got no estrogen side effects, okay, then there's an argument for that. But most people around 300 milligrams, I think over 300 milligrams, they start, a lot of people start having some kind of estrogen side effects. So that's why I usually keep a lower foundation of 300 milligrams of test, and then I add more other compounds on top of that. So if he still wants to do the same amount of milligrams, I like 300 milligrams of test, and then 400 milligrams of EQ or 400 milligrams of NPP, for example. And I like the idea of rotating between them so side effects don't accumulate for any one of them for too long.
Wait, Broderick Chavez, what? Boston?
It sounds like a Broderick Chavez cycle.
Yeah, there's no, we don't do that here. But can I comment on something? So, Tony, about the estrogen with the test, that becomes a particular problem when you add that NPP there, because you get the prolactin, severe prolactin effects when you have that higher estrogen. For people that don't know, estrogen and progesterone both cause increases in prolactin. So when you have that agonism with the NPP we think the progesterone receptor, it should cause that.
And once you get like that type of gyno from excess estrogen combined with a 19 nor like NPP or tren, like that's the worst type of gyno. It's harder to get rid of. If you have just estrogen gyno, it's easy to get rid of.
Boston used to lactate distances, like he would squirt.
Yeah, I used to shoot.
Oh, okay. I think that's basically a request to see how. Oh, look by the way. More shredded now, huh?
Oh yeah, you are. Wow, you're very fit.
All right, let's see. I don't know. I always have to check. Can I lactate right now on camera? Can you see that?
You got some out. Oh, wow.
I got it.
That was how much I had. I never had what Bostin had, but...
Yeah.
Tony, did you ever get your glands removed?
No, but I want to because Joe Aesthetics just got it done here. I don't know what he paid for it. Doesn't matter. It's going to be
cheap as fuck in Thailand.
And he got it, and he's like, yeah, this is just a 2-week recovery. Like 2 weeks, 2-week recovery. Amazing.
Mine was 4 weeks, but I ended up training like the week after, and I pulled my stitches out like an idiot.
Mine was, I had the drains in for 4 weeks. It was horrific, but it was my mistake. Wow. It was my mistake. I had the damn
3 different extremes.
Oh my God. I know it was a great surgery. Oh, but Tony, if you want to do it, the best guy is in Orange County. He's awesome. I'll give you his name. I forgot his name right now. He's really good, but I made mistakes and I was messing around. I kept the drains in and I didn't work out for 6 weeks. So I became fat. I was ordering food, became fat, had the drain. It was a horrible experience. But anyway, okay, we'll move past this one. Armesh Singh always comments on our page. Singh means lion in Indian. It's cool in Punjabi. He says 200 milligrams test E. By the way, something you commented on, Tony. For the audience to know, we always want to know your background, your goals, your previous cycles. But sometimes people don't know that we want to know that, so they don't include it. So he said 200 milligrams test E, 40 milligrams turinabol or Anavar with ezetimibe and lots of fish oil for 8 weeks. He doesn't like high tests because it makes him lethargic and causes insomnia. The insomnia comes from androgen receptor activation. So the more androgenic something is, the more insomnia you could get. It's not from the estrogen. He says, yeah, go ahead.
This is really similar to my first cycle. My first steroid cycle for my first physique competition when I was 30 years old, 9 years ago. That was the first time physique showed up on the scene, right? I was one of the first people to compete in for one of the first physique competitions. And I started out with T-ball. I told myself, I'm just going to take T-ball. I think it was around 40 milligrams. I think 50 sounds more like what I was doing, 50 milligrams of T-ball. And then it was a week later, I decided, you know what, this is stupid. I should have a testosterone foundation. I know this. And now finally, okay, now I broke through. I actually took a steroid. Now I might as well take it to the next level and inject it, right? The natural progression. The gateway drug is oral steroids for sure. And I think I added in roughly something like 200 milligrams of test. This is like my first cycle exactly. I didn't use, I was taking fish oil at the time. I wasn't using acid. But actually I have that right. Look I have this right here in front of me because this is one that I think you told me to get one time. Oh, God,
yeah, so there it is. And by the way, Tony, you know what's great about that? It also lowers systemic inflammation. Could be helpful for the COVID responses also.
Okay, I'll take it today.
Tony, what was your first physique show?
What was it?
Where at? Because I was at
Sacramento.
Okay, because I competed in the very first show ever that had physique. It was the NPC Fresno, and it was in 2012.
Oh. Wow. So I wasn't the first competition, but I was the first one of the first competitions that ever came to Sacramento.
Was it in 2012?
What is that? Yeah, 9 years ago. Exactly. I was 30 years old. Yeah, 2012.
Yep, that's when it came out.
What's Fresno like? I've never been there, but I only hear
it's
bad
kind
things.
of boring, man. There's like nothing there, huh?
It's boring. It's Mexican style, which I love Mexican style. But yeah, it's boring.
Yeah, they have the Fresno Bulldogs there. So I wanted to comment on this. So the only thing I see as a disadvantage here is what I see the advantage of turinabol, or I've never used turinabol, or Anavar, basically any steroid that doesn't have an ester. The advantage is you can use it infrequently so your body doesn't adapt to it. So what I would love to do personally is to use something sustainable, maybe like HCG or something like that, and use Anavar, say 3 times a week, or even better, use turinabol once, use Anavar once, and then use turinabol once every other day, maybe on the important workout days. That way your body doesn't adapt to it and you don't have to use high doses. The other thing I would mention is you can take these things sublingually, maybe reducing the total dose you need and the toxicity to the liver. You guys have any other comments?
Leo, what do you think would happen if somebody put them up their ass? Would they absorb?
Yeah, faster. But
wow.
Boston's always curious about these things after you heard about it the first time.
I would like to take some halo testing that way then.
Oh, you know my buddy snorts halotestin, right?
No.
Yeah, I never told you that?
No.
Like in the back of the gym, there's halo lines on max effort days. Yeah, you can go like, hey, you want to go do a line of halo? Like, no, I don't want to do a line of halo.
Immediately hit him? Like, does he go crazy?
Oh yeah. And then he takes those salts and he goes crazy, bro.
Oh shit, the ammonia salts. Yeah,
exactly. But the halotestin is way more effective. When he goes on arm wrestling days or like when he competes, he's blue from that starting day. Anyway, so Max the Butcher says, first time trying no test as I've started to follow some of Tyen's protocols, which Tony Huge, by the way, originally popularized, with food with great results. So thought would try a nandrolone-based cycle. The thing is, I notice he has a high NPP, but then he has EQ. You know, this has estrogenic effects and psychological effects, little psychological effects, but I think that it would defeat sort of the calmness that you get from the NPP psychologically. And then I'm curious why this is cool. I like CJC with DAC. Very, very, very interesting drug. But why does he have this here? Is he recovering from something? Because the concern is BPC really upregulates what's called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. So it can upregulate angiogenesis, the birth of new blood vessels in the body. That's the worst part of growth hormone for cancers. It's that angiogenesis. So unless you're healing from a wound, I would be careful with using this long term, you know? You guys have any other comments? I mean, Bostin, you must have a...
Okay. So this is I would never recommend this to anyone. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. But Leo, I want you to ask this guy seriously after. I personally am curious. I want to know this. Ask him after he runs his cycle how he liked it. I'm actually curious.
Yeah, it's very curious. What do you think, Tony?
I'd be really curious also. I mean, if he hasn't done a Deca only cycle before, then do a Deca only cycle.
Exactly.
So you know what's happening. If you're gonna add other compounds in, then it's like, why not just go back to a testosterone based cycle?
Especially something estrogenic that has it's weirdly increases estrone in the body and seems maybe through that, or maybe the decrease in estrone, I don't know, but EQ causes anxiety in some people.
Yeah, so these are my first impressions, but maybe. Well, it says he started following some of Tyen's protocols. So if Tyen actually put this out as a protocol, then I'd say, okay, there must be some reason. They must work together well. But if it's trying to take Tyen's protocol of just taking Deca or NPP, and then you're adding something else, now you've defeated the entire purpose.
I think so too. I don't think Tyen recommends this. I think he usually does only nandrolone, right? Yeah. There are sometimes he adds other things to it too, but there's a thought process of very detailed analysis behind it. Now you don't just willy-nilly add something to it. Because
I've yet to see anyone that guy trains that looks good though.
Yeah, but they're not like professionals. They do it you know why they do it, Boston? It's mainly people that are afraid of hair loss. So apparently nandrolone, unless you're using finasteride or dutasteride, when 5-alpha reductase converts it to another, like 5-alpha reductase is what makes DHT around your hair, it converts it to a less androgenic compound. So that's why they use Deca by itself.
Are you preaching those cycles to bodybuilders?
I don't think are they competitive, Tony?
No, I mean, it's not. That's not originally what it was.
That's not the goal, yeah.
Competition bodybuilders, but I'll say the reason for it is also simplicity. So, because remember, I was the one who popularized the Deca only cycle. It wasn't my idea. It's just that Tyen came up with it, and I thought it was so interesting. It deserved attention, and I had the influence to bring it attention back then. So, at the time, I thought this was the most ridiculous thing ever. But then, when we got to really talking about it, we thought this is a really low maintenance way for people to use gear. If they use only Deca, they don't need to mitigate estrogen. They don't need any other ancillaries. The side effects are low. They can run it long term. Okay, I understand. It's simple. With testosterone, the problem is as you increase the dosage, which everybody increases the dosage, you're going to have to mitigate a lot of the side effects. You got to deal with increased DHT and estrogen, and you got to take ancillaries. And with the Deca only cycle, the argument is you don't need to worry about so many other compounds and complexity.
How is the sex drive and libido on that?
They say it's good.
Yeah, it's supposed to be okay with Deca only. The risk is when you add something else in. Also, that's why.
Particularly estrogen, right? Something that converts to estrogen or has estrogenic effects, right? Yeah, but Tony, I wanted to mention, we should mention that, I'm really sad that your originally huge channel is no longer there. I mean, I gotta say, I'm really honored to be both with you and Bostin in a podcast. You two were my favorite channels that I used to watch before. I mean, Bostin didn't really have a channel, but he was all over the place.
I would do random shit all the time.
Yeah, he just had a few videos and then the thing got shut. But you guys were my favorite. And the reason is because I could always tell that you guys were very honest people and direct. Sometimes people mistake charisma for dishonesty. You're a very direct person, and that's why you get a lot of flack, because you tell the real things about your lifestyle and everything like that. Anyway, moving to this one, he gave us more information. He said he's only been bodybuilding for 2 years, minus COVID shutdowns, but he has a lot of resistance training as in wrestling and MMA. So he wants to do Test E, Primo E. What is Testosterone, by the way? I've never used this thing.
It's Ment. That's Ment. Strong.
Oh, we have the Ment expert on. Okay, so this would be interesting. So he's using 400 of Test, 500 of Primo, 150 of Ment for 16 weeks, possibly with 3 to 4 units of growth hormone. Oh, I didn't mention it, the other one, the guy that was using growth hormone twice a day. You're going to make yourself insulin resistant twice a day, but you may cause more fat loss if you're not eating carbohydrates and becoming more and more insulin resistant. So I would rather inject it once before bed personally. But anyway, so he says, and metformin. Which metformin, anyway, he's a high aromatizer with Test, but tolerates Testosterone well, while being anabolic. And he says at 5 to 10 milligrams a day of ACE, I feel a little bit more estrogenic, but nothing major to need an AI. What is ACE?
Is he talking about ACE inhibitor?
I don't think so. No. He says first experience with Primo, trying to bulk from 200 to 220. What do you think about this combination of, let's just say, Primo and Ment and Test E, Tony? You're the expert. I've never used Ment.
Yeah, well, okay, so Ment is so much more powerful than Test. If there's a receptor and these compounds are competing, Ment is going to get it 100% of the time. And Test is just going to get kicked off the receptor and converted to estrogen. So you got to be careful when you're combining testosterone and Ment, because some of that testosterone may just end up to be converted to estrogen. You're going to have estrogen side effects. And the Ment, the type of estrogen that Ment converts to, is a very powerful, insanely powerful estrogen. I mean, we're talking you can get gyno in 24 hours type powerful estrogen.
Oh, interesting.
So I worry he's a high aromatizer, and but he tolerates Testosterone well, which is amazing. But I worry he's going to have some serious estrogen conversion from the combination of two. As far as the Primo dosage, I think that's pretty normal. I think that's what most people run of Primo, and that's fine. And on top of it, all of these things competing for the same receptor, of course. And yeah, it's not exactly how receptors work. Not even an expert on it.
No, that is how they work.
Some kind of spillover effect too.
Very coherent. Very coherent.
Using very powerful compounds with very weak compounds. Those weak compounds are just going to turn into side effects over a certain threshold. But it depends on where that threshold is. This is where it comes in. Like, how much muscle does he have? Tony,
I got to tell you something interesting. After we get off the call, I'm going to send you a website that I discovered recently. It's an algorithm that you can put in certain molecules, and it estimates which receptors it may bind to in the body. And you'd be shocked. Like, I put in, for example, Superdrol, Anadrol, Dianabol, and they are wildly different, just as I always suspected. These things are having access to all kinds of receptors in the body, like the ROR receptors that Accutane, vitamin A work around, all kinds of receptors. So, Ment may be doing all kinds of things, but don't you think that Ment and Primo may work well together, with Primo having this like anti-estrogenic effect?
Yeah, yes. And I mean, if I was going to use it for that purpose, I'd use Masterone. But Primo is really good for nitrogen retention, and people can't eat enough on Testosterone. I mean, when you're so anabolic on Ment, the limiting factor, it's one of these compounds where the limiting factor becomes your diet. And so Primo allows you to be a little bit more flexible with your diet with better nitrogen retention also. So that's why there's also an additional benefit to combining them.
Leo, the roundest I was bloated too. I was on like 1.5 grams or 2 grams of testosterone with like 100 milligrams of Ment every other day. I was so bloated. I think I was using letrozole as an anti-estrogen. I mean, I got my glands removed, so I don't even got to worry about it, but I got up to like 280.
Holy crap. That's fascinating. Okay, we'll move to the next one.
Oh, but Leo, what's 5 to 10 milligrams of ACE?
I have no idea what he's saying. I think he's trying to talk about an aromatase inhibitor.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what he's saying.
When I first experimented with Ment, I did 100 milligrams per day for 30 days, and I put on 30 pounds
by itself.
Yeah, it was by itself. Yeah,
no testosterone.
No test. You don't.
How did you feel?
Amazing. That's
all you took. That's just all you took. That's it.
I felt absolutely amazing, but the gyno was a problem.
Only 700 milligrams of anabolics a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
But have you guys
too high of a dosage? I'm not recommending that. It's just that I wanted to see what this compound does to my blood work and how it affects my body. And this is like, someone's got to do the experiment, and I was willing to take the risk.
Tony, did you ever use DHB, the 5-alpha reductase version of, or reduced version of equipoise?
Right. No, but that's what Coach Trevor always wanted me to use. And yeah,
it's an interesting drug.
Yeah.
I've tried it a couple of times just to experiment, literally like maybe 3 times or 4 times now. But it's very interesting. Doesn't seem to have many psychological effects, but seems quite androgenic. With that said, I've heard of a lot of people having kidney issues using it, I think because of the solvents. Bostin and I have a suspicion that some of these injectables with high solvents could be the reason that his kidneys quickly got inflamed.
Oh, yeah, I think so too, because it's like if you take 1 cc of a steroid with a certain amount of benzyl benzoate or potentially oxidized fats or whatever else could be in it, it's not a big deal. People on TRT never have to worry about solvents, right? But bodybuilders, you inject 10 cc's a week of something, that's a lot of benzyl benzoate, that's a lot of benzyl alcohol, and if there's any other contaminants in it, that's a lot of things. All of these have to get filtered through the liver or the kidneys. Exactly. It's going to definitely put stress on them.
So in 2018, I got my kidney creatinine, it was like 0.90, and the worst smelling stuff I've ever put in my body ever was DHB base, and it hurt so bad. This stuff was so painful, DHB base. And I really do think that my creatinine starting to rise a little bit after experimenting with so many of compounds that are made in glucol.
To be honest, I've become a little suspicious about this. I'm a hypochondriac, and I've been using So everybody always asks what I've been using since I've been working out. I'm not doing this intentionally. It's just I knew this would happen. When I go work out again, if you don't work out with androgens and you used to, it's so tempting. So I've been trying to bypass the liver, taking like injectable orals, and I've been suspicious recently. I don't know if I have a lower back pump or I have I'm a hypochondriac, so I think I'm feeling my kidneys. So I'm going in for a kidney ultrasound, by the way, next week to Cedars-Sinai.
Which lab are you using?
I'm not using a lab. I'm going to the Cedars-Sinai to do the ultrasound.
No. For the injectable orals.
Oh, I was using our guy, but you know what happened.
Okay, yeah. His is good. His is good.
But now probably Juice Pal.
So I have another comment about the chemicals in gear. So you mentioned glycol, right? So ethyl oleate is another solvent, but also a carrier. And so when you're manufacturing this stuff, this is a laboratory right behind me, right? So I've spent a lot of time in underground laboratories. I'm not an expert manufacturer myself. I usually work with people who are, because it's a lot to know. But I've seen, testosterone enanthate mixes very easily. And a lot of these, it's almost like part of the reason why the steroids that are so popular is because they're easier to make and they're cheaper, right? But you actually have other compounds like DHB that may be much better, but maybe they're harder to work with, they're harder to manufacture. What happens with the more exotic compounds is you got to be more creative in how you dissolve them and how you prevent them from crystallizing and a number of other things. And you start, and the easy way to do it, the easy way to underground manufacture is put more chemicals. You see, that's a chemical cabinet back there. I can make anything dissolve with those chemicals, but it can be highly toxic. So unless your underground lab actually cares about your health and is trying to minimize toxic chemicals, I've seen gear labels where it says it's just benzyl benzoate and benzyl alcohol, but I actually know that they were using some other solvents that are toxic to make it dissolve. Because what happens is customers freak out when they see crystallization in a vial, which is not that big of a deal. I'd much rather have my gear crystallize 10% and just avoid injecting those crystals than have it be full of chemicals that prevents it from crystallization. It's the same thing as organic food. You know, do you want to buy a food that lasts forever, that's like plastic, it's not real? Or do you want to buy food that goes bad in a couple of days because it's natural? I mean, it's almost like gear is the same way. The less solvent you use and the healthier solvents you use, the more likely it is going to crash. But everybody's focused on the crash instead of what toxic chemicals could be in the compound.
I've had to heat up so much gear, Tony, that for the longest time when I was using injectable orals regularly, I literally had to microwave every time my vial. I'd have to microwave it every time because it would crystallize. But you know, with solvent is crazy because I got it in pure, a bottle of it, and it literally ate the rubber stopper off. Is ethyl oilate.
Yeah.
You know it's crazy because I used to mix it in my syringe. I'd pull out like a cc of glucol and that or a painful injectable, and then I would add some more ethyl oilate and I would microwave it just so it would mix and it would help with the pip because it helps with the injections. But man, I tell you what, that stuff can't be good for your body.
That's dissolving the rubber, and then when you inject it, now you're injecting rubber in your body also.
Probably literally melted rubber.
Yeah.
So just for the audience to know, so what could happen if you have these solvents? They might go into your bloodstream, still intact, and start to attack what they call cytotoxic, hurt your cells. When they hurt your cells, your immune system will be activated, like after COVID, and your immune system may overreact and then damage you. But what people should check is on your blood test, C-reactive protein at the very least. See if it's above 0.3 in the American metric so that you know if you have some state of chronic inflammation.
Since we're talking about crystallization, there's my microscope and there's my slides. And I'm always looking at stuff under the microscope, including gear. This is testosterone suspension in a couple different preparations, and I'm looking at the crystallization. It's
Tony, you
crazy.
never invite Bostin and I there. I feel left out. You haven't invited us at all. I know Boston's hard to get out of the country, but I'll come.
When the borders open, absolutely. The borders in Thailand have been a nightmare for a while.
Now, Tony, what you're doing over there in this lab in Thailand is completely legal, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like reselling gear or anything like that. I mean, this is testosterone. Okay, whether or not you're supposed to deal with testosterone, but nobody cares here, right? Nobody cares because nobody's getting hurt. You know, they're focused on other things. And then I've just got a ton of research chemicals, which are not illegal. They're, not for human consumption type thing, right? And I'm actually researching with them and a bunch of nootropics and bodybuilding drugs and all that. But no, it's not illegal. It's not illegal drugs. It's not recreational drugs. It's research.
All right, let's do one last one before we take some other questions. So Guieseppe, I think that's how you say it. He says he's managed to be below 10% body fat this summer and wants to give a strength boost to his juggernaut method of strength training during this winged. I hope that's not Jason Blaha, but I think it's another kind. And he says, I'm staying away from 19 Nors as I will be competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and cannot sacrifice cardio. So you want less water retention, extracellular water retention. So he says the next cycle will be 2.5 units of growth hormone. Well, that's going to affect your cardio a little bit. You're going to have extracellular water. 300 test E, so you're going to have some aromatization, which will affect your cardio a bit. And 500 units of HCG per week. That's not enough. That may keep your balls a little alive. By the way, guys, what keeps the balls alive is not HCG. It's not luteinizing hormone. It's follicle stimulating hormone. That's what grows your balls. And follicle stimulating hormone also agonizes the luteinizing hormone receptor. So you can use folotropin alpha like I do, sometimes by itself. Sometimes I don't use HCG just to keep them alive. But anyway, he wanted to throw in some Primo, but he's uncertain on dosage and wants to run 50 milligrams daily for VAR. I hate it when people say VAR, Anavar, for the last 6 weeks. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, about the HCG, it's like when you do the research on HCG versus HMG, it just doesn't make any sense why people are using so much HCG and ignoring HMG. If anything, use HMG and forget the HCG.
If you want to use one thing, but HMG is actually in all studies less effective than recombinant FSH combined with HCG. For not a little bit less effective, but it's more convenient. In Thailand, especially, they don't have recombinant FSH. They have HMG, I think. So for those that don't know, HMG contains both FSH and luteinizing hormone.
So my strategy is I use both. But I understand why some people don't use HMG because it does cost more. With the HCG vial, you use 10% of the vial per injection or 20% of the vial per injection. But with HMG, oftentimes you're injecting the whole vial. And they're similar cost, so it ends up being like 5 times the cost. But for me, like keeping fertility, because I don't know exactly why he's using the HCG other than to maintain fertility and testosterone testicle function. And if so, it's like HMG would do that much better than HCG, even if you used less. But my balls shrink, and HCG does bring my balls back. But I know HCG is not necessarily helping my fertility, and it's not going to allow me to rebound as fast post-cycle as if I was using HMG.
Yeah, true. And just, we should give a shout out to Anabolic Pharmacist from the forum. That, see, in the US, they sell recombinant FSH, like folotropin alpha pens, for like $1,000. Abroad, like in countries that are poorer, like Turkey, the same pharmaceuticals companies will sell them for $150 or less. So it can become affordable if you have the right source. My comment is just that I don't think the Anavar should be daily. Take advantage of it. You can run it longer than 6 weeks and do it 3 times a week. And then about the Primo, for me, if I was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete, which I do know, I sometimes consult with them, I would be using Primo as my main compound because it is more erythropoietic than testosterone, somewhat similar to equipoise, doesn't have the psychological effects of equipoise, doesn't cause as much water retention, and I would use that as the base, and I wouldn't be using Test. I would be using maybe a little bit higher HCG, maybe with an aromatase inhibitor or FSH, and you can use the growth hormone, but if you really want, and maybe you should include cardarine, for example. That seems like something good to add.
Well, that would be good for what he does, be adding in the GW, yeah.
Very, very valuable.
So if he came to me and he was like, I'm open to other completely different approaches, I would say cardarine, RAD 140, and cycle your carbs. And on the days that you train really hard, those are going to be your higher carb days. And on those days, use MK677. Because he's probably using the growth hormone for like recovery. When you're doing this type of like performance-based training, the growth hormone is going to be more about recovery than just muscle size or whatever. So might as well use MK677 on days you have the calories to support the recovery.
I don't know if you know this, Tony, but in our pituitary, we produce 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly, kinds of molecular weights of growth hormone that function differently in the body than the single kind of growth hormone that you get when you inject it. And when you inject growth hormone, I found evidence, your brain stops producing growth hormone acutely for a few hours. So MK sounds like a better option for that reason, but also because MK is basically ghrelin, the hormone that activates when you're fasting, that gives you that energy that you can't sleep the first couple of days. So that's a nervous system energy that could be useful in the combat sport, I think. I think it's a great idea.
When I used to take MK677 before bed, it would be so hard for me to fall asleep. I would have the worst sleep ever.
Exactly.
Literally the worst sleep.
Yeah, that's that innervation. Okay, so we have some questions. Jimbo Slice McNeil says, question for Tony. I followed Tony since the early days of Enhanced Athlete, like I did. The content has been priceless, true. He says, now, Tony, you're promoting the EA Inner Circle. Upon signing up, what is one going to experience? And he also says, any Australian sources on your forum? I don't know if he's talking about ours or yours.
So EA Inner Circle has a lot of the videos from Coach Trevor and I that got censored other places, and it's really breaking it down. Like there's a lot of videos of Coach Trevor just kind of walking through the whole process to understand the compounds and the idea behind building a cycle. And then there's a custom cycle calculator in there. And then it's a community where people talk about their cycles and approaches, and the whole foundation of cycles inside the Inner Circle is the anabolic matrix, where we try to get, everybody comes in and they want to know what's my steroid cycle. And I just try to educate them about growth hormone and insulin and inflammation and all these other pathways that deserve attention, because those are kind of become limiting factors. And, the gear goes up, the side effects go up. And then you have these other pathways that people aren't giving attention to. Give attention to those, reduce the gear, lower the side effects, not have side effects because we're not trying to megadose every pathway. Although it's really also about rapid transformation, because when you do rapid transformation, you cannot ignore any one pathway. Otherwise, that's a limiting factor for sure. So there's a lot of content about the historical rapid transformations that we did, and the cycles and the theories behind them, basically, and how we mitigate the side effects and the water retention around it.
Boston, what he's talking about with the matrix thing, you heard about that before?
No.
He means like using androgens and using growth hormone, using insulin, not like just using androgens. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. But I'm a big believer in that anyways.
Yeah, you are too. That's what I was saying. Oh, I need to get one of those.
Matrix. there's a little bit of a shadow, but androgen receptor, estrogen pathway, HGH, insulin, inflammation, myostatin, basically peptides, cortisol, DNA, volumization, neurological energy, and cell longevity.
Now, by the way, you could expand that because instead of just IGF-1, there are tons of growth factors like fibroblast growth factor, all these other things that get activated when you activate IGF-1. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Great.
So that's why it's IGF/peptide/local growth factors also.
Exactly. The local growth.
Yeah, exactly. These things get converted in the muscle to other peptides that are even more powerful. But, we usually just talk about the precursor hormones like IGF and HGH.
Hey, we should mention for the audience, having a whiteboard is really helpful to conceptualize your thinking. It's a very valuable tool. It's a hack for your life. I have an industrial size whiteboard, but it's on the wall. I want to get one of those that I can move around.
I've got this whiteboard. I got a whiteboard on the wall there, and my whole top of my refrigerator is a whiteboard. So 100% agree.
Yeah, so this is one of the best ways to get the most out of your life is to hack your environment around you. Make your environment nudge you in the right direction and make it useful to you. Make everything around you a tool, I always believe that.
And if something isn't useful, eliminate it because it's a distraction.
That's one of the understated things is a lot of greatness isn't just accumulating things, but getting rid of what's unnecessary. Very true. Okay, so D. Provencio says, what is everyone's stance on the Redcon 1 incident about pulling out his company from the Arnold? Curious about what you guys have to say.
I heard, Bostin, I heard your response to it.
Did you respond?
Yeah, but Leo, we just did this. We just did this with Chris Tuttle.
We talked about, do we talk? I didn't know that. Oh.
I know we talked about it with somebody. I thought it was Chris Tuttle, but
maybe we didn't.
I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, me too.
My
are you surprised, Tony?
I haven't.
Talk about it.
No. I mean, it was good, but it's like Arnold's a legend. Like for anybody in the industry to attack him is like it's almost like it's always been off limits.
Yeah.
But why is it off limits? I mean, I don't give a fuck about his status. I mean, and I'm glad that somebody spoke up.
Yeah. I'm glad that everybody's supporting it and everything. So I love Arnold for what he did. I really want to give my opinion on it because I haven't given it to anybody else. And it's the same thing. We're all on the same page. We're all freedom fighters and bodybuilding is about freedom. And we are a taboo sport. So like when freedom is decreased, what gets eliminated first? Like bodybuilding and all the things that we love, right? Because the mainstream doesn't accept this and they don't care about balancing our freedom with their control. So with Arnold, though, I recognized very early on when I finally figured out how politics work and the media works that most super famous people had to be sellouts. They would never get to that position. They have to have someone backing them, and they can't afford to be attacked. So they have to have people. They have to go with the mainstream. They just have no choice. If you want to get huge, like The Rock is the perfect example. The ultimate sellout of the year was The Rock.
Really, I don't know much about him.
Oh, he did this scripted thing with Joe Biden for the presidency that was just so. I mean, it was so gag. It was so fake, and it was so. But it's not just about getting paid for it. It's not like they said, "Hey, we'll pay you millions of dollars." It's like they have leverage to destroy you. And so if you don't support that mainstream, then, you can just with the technological advancements, you can be deplatformed and just completely eliminated. So I believe that Arnold is strongly part of the system and a sellout or whatever you want to call it. And I also recognize the character. Like when I watch him and his body language and how he speaks, I know. Let me back up. I think you can categorize people into one out of 100 different people. Like there's 100 different types of people, and you can fit them in these categories. And you can watch their facial expressions. You can listen to what they talk about and how they think. You can fit them in this category, and you could stereotype them and be 90% accurate. And he fits into this category of this person that I grew up with that I know so well, so intimately well, exactly his psychology that I know Arnold's psychology. I see exactly how he thinks. And it's not that he's a bad person. He's just a complete sellout. He's just someone who says, my goal is to be a champion. Like when it comes to Olympia also and winning Olympia before, it's like, my goal is to be a champion. Nothing else matters. I don't have values outside of me becoming a champion. And that's where he was. And so when he says, screw your freedom, he's basically finally, I think, crossed the line. And I did watch the whole interview. And okay, you could say it's kind of taken out of context, but it's not taken out of context if you watch all of his other content since this whole thing started, or even over his entire career, actually. Sell out from the beginning. I have no problem with sellouts. I just like the honesty of it. Like, I don't want someone to be labeled a legend pioneer who stood up for freedom when he never stood up for freedom unless it was part of his script. It's all just, everything about Arnold is scripted from day one, basically. We just have to understand that.
I have some comments. The first thing I wanted to say to the audience is, in America, we tend to think of a overpowering government that controls our freedom as necessarily being leftist. But historically, that's not true. There are, people like, for example, the Nazis. They were not left. They were right. They were very controlling. Look at China, communist country, or USSR, the former Soviet Republic with Joseph Stalin, on the left controlling people. So in America, sometimes we think it's like tribalism, but it's not necessarily. America has a unique foundation of principle of giving the people the rights. Actually, originally, the reason was to overthrow a tyrannical government because of the British. So I wanted to distinguish that. We're not partisan necessarily. This is about freedom, which is a separate issue, uniquely American. And many foreigners comment on this and they don't understand necessarily what our forefathers, and my forefathers, my mom's side, some of the oldest people in America, fought for. My forefathers fought in the Confederate War, they fought in the Revolutionary War, they fought in World War I, World War II to defend our freedom. So Americans, some of us feel very strongly about that. And the second thing I wanted to comment on is Arnold is what Bostin would call a phony, specifically. So why would I say that? Because look, it's very obvious. Arnold was, forget the fact that he became a movie star and forget that Arthur Jones said he was a gay prostitute back in the day, which who knows if that's true or not. But what was interesting, maybe he sold his soul to the devil. He married a lady that changed his life completely. A lady from the Kennedy family. That's how he got into politics. That's how he rose himself high. He owed everything in his life to this lady. One of my most important principles is loyalty. If I married, first of all, it's a suspect when you marry a lady that's very powerful. Already, your incentives are suspect. But you marry her and then you cheat with your maid. It's different if he came out and said, I made a mistake, I cheated with a maid or whatever. He didn't come out, he got caught. So under his wife's eye, embarrassing her and humiliating her without her knowing. It's not like having a polygamous thing that's open. This is a betrayal of the closest person to you that gave you everything. After that, you know what kind of man he is.
Didn't he want to pay the maid off to be quiet?
I'm sure he tried to. I'm sure he tried to do everything he could. But you're talking about, once you see that, you know the character of a man. It's not like he was drunk and he did something wrong. You're talking about he lived with the boy there, never told the boy he's his dad. Let the gardener think this is something like, after that, you're surprised that he does this. This is a guy that will do whatever suits him.
So back to the freedom in America. Okay. I've been all over the world. I love America for the freedom, for the value of freedom, but it's largely an illusion. There's an illusion of more freedom than there actually is. And that's what's also unique to America, because a lot of countries don't even give you the illusion. Thailand doesn't give you the illusion. This is a military dictatorship. The people don't really have a say in anything, and they accept that. They're born knowing the government is all powerful and there's not much they can do to change the government. But in America, we're born to think we can create our own destiny and the American dream, and we get to vote and our vote counts, and it's just really not true to the extent they make us think. So I don't like the illusion. I just want it to be honest. And America is so dishonest because the media is constantly hiding the fact. The media is the veil of illusion. And someone like Arnold and The Rock and pretty much any actor and people in the mainstream media, because otherwise they would never let them get that far, are part of that illusion. And so again, I don't hate Arnold, but he's part of the illusion. And now you're seeing, like, when you see all these people come out and then all of a sudden attack American values, now you've got this huge conflict. You got this conflict before. These guys were paid actors to try to support freedom, and now they're paid actors against freedom. And so now you get to see it's not freedom that drove these people, and freedom was not their values. Their value was their loyalty to some higher power which is granting them the ability to have their fame and money, which means they're putting themselves first before values and before other people.
That sounds very accurate. And historically, because I like to read a lot of history, we've really been losing our individual liberties in America since basically the turn of the 20th century. That's when the government started growing much larger, when they, conquered Hawaii, before that the Philippines, and the government started getting control over our lives. And we've slowly been relinquishing individual liberty in the US for the last 100 years, 120 years. It's very much so. And also on that topic of Thailand, so I happen to be half Emirati also. So I spent most of my life in Dubai. So I got the opportunity to come from an American's perspective and live in Dubai, accepted as one of them, meeting princes and sheikhs all day and knowing what I can and cannot say. And you say something wrong. I mean, in my family, maybe I was a little bit protected, but in other families, you can say something wrong and you disappear. No, there's no charge. There's no nothing. You're gone. Okay, so that's what happens when really you lose all freedom. What's interesting is that the United States backs that government. So the freedom-toting United States actually backs a lot of these dictatorships in South America and the Middle East. And so, but when you get to live in both places, you appreciate that ideal at least, and you appreciate how unique it is in the world. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Okay, that was a little detail. So let's do something interesting. So AW Fitness says, not sure if Tony is willing to share, but what is his protocol to building back the muscle he wants to gain back since he got sick? Curious on what PEDs he's going to take and dosages. Actually, Patrick Meehan also asked this, and so did a couple of other people.
So here's what I'm doing right now. So I lost 35 pounds or something. I got down to 193 pounds. Wow. And I don't necessarily want to gain all 35 pounds back because I feel like I was way over what my genetics want me to be. Like I'm really holding the extra body weight. My body wants to be super lean. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I was natural and I didn't lift and I ate healthy, I'd probably be a really skinny 170 pound guy type thing. Really? My whole family had the skinny genetics. Interesting. So I was a hard gainer. It was really hard to put on muscle, and it was easy. It's always easy to lose fat, or easier to lose fat with a fast metabolism, ectomorph, right? So I'm going to go a little bit more towards that style. I'm going to stay shredded, but I'm going to get bigger. So think like Joe Aesthetic style, like about his size and about his shreddedness. So that's kind of the target, which means I got to remain as shredded as I am now, and I got to put on size. Now, what I already even noticed after 2 days of being on the chemistry is I'm already gaining water. It happens fast. I mean, what I hit was a little bit of, I hit MK677 and 5 units of just 10 milligrams and 5 units of insulin pre-workout. I drink my intra-workout drink. I have potassium before the workout, lots of sodium in my intra-workout Carb Tech, Anabolic IV, and EAA drink. And then I take also pre-workout 10 milligrams of D-ball, super low dosage. Normal dosage would be 40 milligrams, right? I take only 10. And TRT is remaining the same as it did when I had Rona. And that's about 250 milligrams every roughly 6 days, something like that. So maybe let's call it 300 milligrams per week of testosterone. And I'm not adding that much more anabolics because I'm not able to train hard enough to really make it worth it. And I'm not trying to overeat so much that I need so much nutrient partitioning. So contrary to everybody thinking that the gear comes first, it's kind of like I need to build up my cardio capacity and my ability to train before the gear is even very helpful to me. Like my heart's pounding when I'm working out, which actually I took Nebivolol, a beta blocker for the last workout, kept my heart rate down, which actually allowed me to have more stamina actually. And I took Cardarine before the workout, so I had more stamina. That was really helpful. So my last workout was actually pretty hard. And that was my first really hard workout since the Rona. And then when I work out harder, I eat more. And then when I eat more, my psychology is I need more chemistry to make sure those calories go into the muscle.
Yeah, that's a great thinking.
And so it starts with low chemistry and I'll keep adding it up. But as always, I still believe in a testosterone foundation, and then you add a SARM, and then add growth hormone and insulin, and then the dosages go up, and then I switch the compounds, and maybe I go from more mild compounds to more harder compounds. And I'll be in the U.S. Starting Monday, and we'll have access to good gyms and around fitness people. Right here in Thailand, the gyms are still closed. They've been open, close, open, close, open, close. Right now they're closed. So when I get back, and I'll also be eating more, it's going to be unavoidable. When you're in America, the food's just addicting. And so I can't help but put on weight. This is what I tell people about my steroid usage. They think it's terrible. I use so many steroids, and why would I do that?
You don't. You're very selective, actually. You just run experiments.
I'm selective. Yeah. And if I didn't take steroids, I'd be fat. I said I'm normally an ectomorph.
You eat a lot. Yeah, diet starts tomorrow.
But I eat a lot of food, and that food is either going to muscle or fat. And if I take steroids, generally speaking, performance-enhancing drugs, that food goes in the muscle. If I don't, that goes in the fat. And I would be fat if I didn't take steroids. And what's worse, me taking steroids in healthy dosages when I check my blood work, or being fat and insulin insensitive and an average Joe, American fast food looking eater type person? Because even though I would eat healthy, that's what I would look like and be unhealthy. And so actually the steroids for me are very healthy as my nutrient partitioners. And so that's how I'm going to approach the cycle.
Are you moving back, or are you just visiting?
I'm coming to visit you guys. Hopefully I come down to Leo in SoCal, and definitely coming over to Florida, because Olympia I'll stay longer before and after. But I'll meet with Enhanced headquarters, and then I'm coming to Olympia, and I'll visit family, and my daughter's flying back from Philippines to the US. So there's like a lot of things I can do. Plus I'm going to go to Mexico and visit my parents there.
What, you plan on keeping your place in Thailand?
Yeah. I'll just keep everything as is in Thailand, so I can just fly back and it's turnkey. Yeah.
So you really like living there over the US, huh?
Oh my God. It's my paradise. Every day I can't even believe this is reality still. A year and a half later, and every day I wake up and go, this can't be real. I must be in a dream. But it's for me. It's what I love. I don't know if you love this, Yeah.
No, he would love it. He just because he's married now and he's a family man, it's harder for him. But I'm sure Boston would.
In the schools over there, are they speaking English or what?
Well, you have the public schools, which just basically train you to be factory slaves, or you have the private schools, which actually are very good, but they cost money, but they speak English, and then the students get to interact with other international students of international people that have their children there who are very successful, which actually gets you some really good networking. When I was in Mexico for my senior year of high school, I was at an international school, and actually the quality of the student there and the networking that I did was amazing, because I'm networking with like high class students that from a parent who owns a hotel who moved here from Italy, so versus just, people I can't find inspiration from.
Are those the American
international schools are very good.
Are you looking at the American schools or the international schools? Because there's a lot of American expatriate schools around the world.
So in Mexico, I was in it was American certified. So it's as if you graduate from the US and American high school, but it's an international school. I mean, it's nothing tied to America. It's basically all these schools prepare you to get into a US college. Yeah. Because that's that's the hardest type of college to get into. That's why.
Yeah, true. Boston, what are you eating, by the way? I'm really curious, because every time I see you, your face looks a little... What do you eat every day? What do you eat? Bodybuilding food? What do you eat?
Oh, so I started eating good again.
What were you not eating when you were not eating good? That's what I'm curious about.
Oh, like it's free range. I'll have like 2 or 3 junk meals a day. Like on the weekend, like this weekend, I ate Chinese food and like Wendy's.
Chinese food? You're eating MSG with the kidney? What are you doing, bro?
Oh yeah, dude. There's no diet restrictions. There's nothing. Like I have no appetite, so I don't eat as much. But my sodium, I'm salting the shit out of everything. I mean, there is no restrictions when it comes to my diet.
So like protein, like you're not even trying to limit protein, because protein can be hard on the kidney.
I'm limiting protein, Tony, because my appetite is shitty. But I'm not limiting protein for any other reason.
No, but you did for a while. Remember, for a couple of months you limited it, and you.
Oh no! For 3 months I did everything, Tony. But my numbers didn't improve, so I said, "Fuck that."
Yeah. But what else? Well, yeah, I was gonna ask you, Tony. You have two children, right? But they're both from Filipino mothers. Filipina mothers. I'm curious. How come you don't have any half Thai children? Is it intentional? Do you like the Filipino culture?
Nice. I chose Philippines because I thought it was cheaper, and I thought it was more family oriented. But honestly, Thailand would have been better. I mean, I love my baby mama too. I'm not saying I would trade her for someone else in Thailand, but honestly, it would have been a lot better to have had. Oh, can you see me?
No, we can't see you. It needs to be charged, but we can hear you.
Okay. If I could go back in time, I would choose Thai because actually the quality of life in Thailand can be higher for cheaper. So you can live cheaper in the Philippines, but the quality of life being lower. In Thailand, for just a little bit more money, you can get a lot more quality of life.
Interesting.
So are you on good terms with both your baby mamas?
Yeah, I talk to them every day. Perfect terms. They're basically they're still with me. Oh, here I'll when I see it go down, I'll fix it. Yeah. They're still with me, and we're still together and basically couples, and they're still faithful and committed as far as I know.
He doesn't mean baby mama the way like they say in the U.S. He just means he's not married, but they're in relationships. You know.
You guys are actually, wait, you're in a 3-way relationship, Tony?
More than 3-way.
I mean, like a 10-way relationship.
It's not a 3-way.
Wow. There's just 2 of them have children.
So Tony, I was after I got my child, I'm thinking I need to get some kind of nanny for later because I'm moving probably out of California eventually. So I was wondering, is it easy to like get a nanny? So I have my nanny when I was a kid because I grew up without a mother, so I had a nanny that was helpful around the house. She's in the Philippines. I'm trying to get like one of her relatives to move them into the U.S. Is that easy to do? Can you get like a visa for someone?
Okay, it depends on the country. In Philippines and Southeast Asia in general, and Thailand is very difficult. You can get one from South Africa very easily.
Interesting, but that's more expensive, I think, I would assume. Much more expensive.
No, because they're 18-year-old girls that want to get out of South Africa is not safe.
That's true.
And the white girls want to get out of South Africa. So you give them an opportunity to come to the U.S.
Why isn't it safe?
Oh, bro.
It's just like a constant race war for ever.
For white people in South Africa, there's a lot of, you can even see Vice documentaries on the subject. There's a lot of antagonism toward white people in South Africa. And it's very dangerous generally, but specifically there's like what you'd call reverse racism.
You got to live in fear 24 hours a day if you're white in South Africa. That's what I hear from South Africans, you know. So,
wow.
I mean, it's totally different. You know, I'm not saying that black people are like that around the world, but that's just how that's just how it evolved there. It's different everywhere you go, you know.
Yeah.
So. Well, I'm saying that's where they want to get out. That's where you can get. They're called an au pair.
Yes.
I'll say like this is why I'm excited to raise children in Asia, because in Thailand I can get a full-time nanny for $300 per month, and that nanny will actually work very hard and care very much for the children. You know, like I can't even imagine what that would cost in the U.S. to have someone like to pay them enough to be passionate about the work. You know, like $6,000 a month.
More than $300 a week.
That's the problem. That's why I was trying to get I was thinking $500 might do it, but the visa issue is the problem. All right. So let's take another question. So this was interesting. Muscle Hamster says, this question is for Tony. I've heard Tony say he feels pressure on his heart and feels water around it. I just want to know his symptoms on how he knows and what it feels like in that situation. I have a lot to say about this too, but curious.
Yeah. So when I first the first time I ever felt pressure on my heart was as a natural or early on in my steroid usage. When I think what happened, I got pericarditis, where I think I was on the T-bar rope with the pad pushing against my chest, and I think I bruised my heart. Oh. So that's the first time I ever felt pressure, that feeling of pressure on my heart. And what would happen is when you breathe, your lungs expand and it compresses your heart. And so normally you don't feel that. But when your heart's bruised or sensitive, or the swelling is so much that it's going to compress it even more against your rib cage, then you can actually feel that pressure and pain. And I actually was hospitalized for that when that happened before. Okay, fast forward to when I do these rapid transformations. It wasn't until I started using the things that caused water retention that I started feeling the pressure in my heart. I didn't feel it from just gear in general. So I feel the water retention, I feel this pressure, and it just feels like someone's pushing on your chest. It just feels like you can feel your heart working harder. And it's not a good feeling, because it makes you self-conscious. Like, it's nice to not even think about the fact you have a heart. It just works. But like when you realize how vulnerable you are, that if this thing stops beating and you feel this pressure on it, is this anxiety that comes from it that's terrible. And I feel that anxiety post-Rona, because post-Rona, I was feeling the pressure on my lungs and my heart with no water retention again. Like from the swelling and the inflammation and potential blood clotting, and my heart maybe having to work harder to overcome potential blood clots, who knows? And so then I got on the blood thinners and then it went away, but I was also out of shape. And so my heart rate would still go up fast. And I didn't like that feeling either. Like when I do one thing, then my heart rate goes up. I feel also very vulnerable about that. So then I got a Nebivolol to slow my heart rate down, and I'm going to keep the water retention off. And then I don't feel that pressure on my heart.
Bostin, do you know what he's talking about when you take 15 units of growth hormone and you feel bloated, your belly feels a bit bloated, and
I get that on MK677.
Like it's a little hard to breathe?
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? So that's actually technically called myocardial edema. It's edema around the heart. I've read papers from MD PhDs that postulate that one of the worst things about bodybuilding is going on and off cycle because of the change in fluid content around the heart. Suddenly the heart has to deal with this less fluid and then suddenly more fluid. And I blame GH15, this ridiculous person who I've made a lot of videos about, who inspired me to try 15 units of growth hormone. And when I did that, I remember one night I went out. I had this girlfriend who's invited me to some party in LA, and I went out and I was happy to go out, and before we walk into the club, I start breathing heavy and I was like, holy shit, I feel really bad. And I felt like something is wrong. So I just took a cab and went back home. And but it happened to me other times where it wasn't so bad. You can, to be honest, I want you guys to like, I got to name names so people can see this, so you know what it looks like. Actually, I don't need to name names. If you see people being interviewed and they, in between their sentences, they take a quick breath, that's that myocardial edema. You can see it on Milos Sarsha, for example. He's older. I don't know if he has some other heart issue, but he always does this in between his breaths. That's a very scary thing.
Jordan Peters was the worst example.
Yeah, Jordan Peters also, who'll be on the show soon. But if you see that, and if you see it in yourself, that's myocardial edema. It can cause permanent changes to the way your heart is. So I'm glad you mentioned this. Also, Tony, I wanted to mention a lot of people that had COVID. I experienced this too, that raised heart rate for weeks after. It's very scary. When you work out in the gym, you see your heart rate is 180 for no reason, or you feel out of breath, you have to sit down after a set. Have you noticed that too? Yeah.
So I wear a heart rate monitor, the iPhone or the Apple Watch, which is good quality, highly accurate, and was tracking it for me. And I go back to the gym and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let my heart get over 120, because normally that would be easy to do. No, it would spike up to 150 very fast. And during weightlifting, 150, that doesn't, my heart rate usually doesn't do that. I mean, not when the rep ranges that I'm working and all that. So that it's, but I didn't know. I don't know if it's Rona related or just deconditioning. Like 3 weeks ago.
Coronavirus happened. So when I was at the hospital, I was talking to a few nurses. They were put on beta blockers after they got coronavirus because of it, all day, like 3 times a day, propranolol. Nebivolol is long acting, but they were taking. So my problem is I only have propranolol and atenolol with me, which are both short acting. I want to take Nebivolol now because I noticed that this heart rate it's not fluctuating that much, but it just quickly rises, which is scary. And to be honest, I also feel sometimes a weird feeling in my heart, which it's not that bad, but I'm gonna go get another cardiac fMRI next week also.
So psychologically, this was affecting me a lot post-Rona, because I feel so vulnerable and mortal. Instead of before, I feel like invincible. Now I feel like anytime I do something and my heart rate spikes, it's like, wow, any little thing could give me a heart attack. Like I know what it would feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why. But the Nebivolol has solved it for me. Huh?
What made you lose all that weight, Tony? You just couldn't eat, or what?
Yeah, I couldn't eat. Like everything tasted like metal, and I don't know if it was the Rona or because I was megadosing zinc. But regardless, like even I knew I needed electrolytes because I was dehydrated, even though I was drinking water. And this is why it got so severe for me. It's not the Rona. Nobody needs to go out and get the jab to prevent the Rona, in my opinion. Yeah. It's the fact that the Rona causes all these potential downstream things that you need to treat, early, because otherwise it gets out of hand. So like dehydration, the first thing when you go to a hospital, what do? They want to hook you up to an IV because hydration is like the number one fundamental thing for your health. Your body can't fix anything or recover from anything if you're dehydrated. Mm. So if the Rona makes you dehydrated, then the dehydration is what's going to really kill you, right? If the Rona gives you inflammation in the lungs, it's the inflammation going to kill you. So you block what's going to kill you from it, and then it's no longer dangerous, right? Yeah. So with the dehydration, with the minerals and stuff, I just couldn't even take in the minerals. So yeah, of course I lost a lot of water. My body was dehydrated. But that was when I probably got down to 190 pounds with dehydration. I'm talking about fully hydrated. I was still 35 pounds down after I rehydrated.
You said you should do a show.
What? You should have jumped into a show.
It was like perfect, which is making me realize, like, if you're competing in physique and you already have muscle and you don't really need to build muscle, you just need to lose the fat. I mean, fasting is a fast way to get there and jump on a physique stage.
He would have been a good candidate for Shelby, huh? Right after that virus, you could dehydrate him fully and just end it.
Yeah. I think obviously the dehydration obviously is a major part of why bodybuilders die. And I think also dehydration contributes to clotting.
Yeah.
Which is maybe one of the reasons my D-dimer was high. I think you have a combination here. I think everybody's having more blood clots because of either the jab or the Rona. And now you go into a bodybuilding show and you're using a diuretic and you're dehydrated. I think it's the combination. But I don't think we can exclude Rona as a possible direct or indirect cause of these deaths, also a contributing factor. Yeah. Something that bodybuilding coaches like Shelby will have to take in consideration going forward, because Shelby might not have realized the increased risk of clotting, for example, or the increased risk that Rona or long-term side effects from Rona or the vaccine have on bodybuilding. When you put yourself in a dehydrated state, now you're more vulnerable for all of those things to happen.
But Tony, you've never experimented with diuretics to that extent, right?
No, I like hydrochlorothiazide. I don't like aldactone because it's an anti-androgen. Like, what's the point? Why didn't you just?
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's like then he drops a loop diuretic at the end. You've never done aldactone.
Right. No. Amin prepared him, so he's probably done a loop diuretic, haven't you? Lasix? Okay,
so yes, this is what I was going to say. So I react just fine to a diazide, hydrochlorothiazide. I don't need Lasix. I don't know why the camera is maybe a loose connection. I don't need a Lasix, or I forget the name of the one that he's using.
Umex.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like Lasix, the same.
It's supposedly stronger than Lasix. I was reading that it's the strongest loop diuretic.
Yeah, it's one of the strongest, really.
I can't do that because my body just shuts down. Like, I've got such a fast metabolism and I lose water so fast. And there's a lot of people like that. Some people can handle high diuretics and some people can't. My body can't handle high diuretics. That being said, Guru Amin and Coach Trevor were both into like the injectable Lasix. But when they're doing it, they also have like IV bag on hand. And it's like this complicated process. It's not a type of thing that they would ever tell an athlete who's on the other side of the country, who they're not in person with, to do by video, because you need to be there in person to protect them. Because who else is going to know how to treat them and what exactly you gave them and what's happening in their body if you're not with them? So Bostin. I do believe you can use these hardcore diuretics and you can inject Lasix and you can go extreme if you've got the coach there with you in person, monitoring you and being able to counter it.
Yeah, but Tony, in all honesty, doing all that crazy Lasix shit that Amin had you do, were the results that much better than you taking a little bit of diazide?
Well, I didn't do the injectable Lasix. Oh my gosh! But I will say that you also have the risk of going the other way, right? Well, you have the risk of dying, and you have the risk of, like, if you get too dehydrated and you get flat. And then you got to try to counteract that, and then it swings the other way. It just becomes a disaster. So I see a large argument for just cruising into the show and not being extreme with it, because then you know exactly what to expect, and it can't fail. You can't go the wrong direction.
Bostin, you know what's a funny historical fact? Amin Ali's guru came from Tony Huge. Tony Huge is the person who called Amin Ali guru. Tony Huge also the person who popularized Ty and Clark. Tony has made a lot of reputations in the industry single-handedly. I learned this over there when I was friends with Amin. Okay, another thing I wanted to tell the audience. Shelby, when he was coaching the second lady in our first call, and that was like 2012. So in the beginning of his coaching, or 2013.
2015.
2015. So he was Dave Palumbo's client. He was still competing. So we were talking on that show about how Shelby may be grandfathering in practices to other people. It seems that Palumbo was the originator of maybe the Clen and T3 stuff.
Palumbo, and he's very similar diet-wise. He was very similar diet-wise with Dave. Had the same kind of carb template, like the zero carb template, high fat day, stuff like that, all that. But Dave's never had
not the diuretic.
Never no.
But also we found out that he was actually a member of Professional Muscle, the forums, and he apparently hired all the coaches on that forum. And apparently they say that's how he learned his stuff.
I heard he worked under Justin Harris as well.
Interesting. Okay, so let's take a couple more questions that are more directed to Boston. Masshole Muscle says, why would Jansen have his clients put gear in the biceps? There's perfectly good oil available even if he doesn't want to give Boss, what? I don't know. Oh, perfectly good oil available. He means not gear. He means synthol.
Yeah. It's because they're taking so much gear that they don't have enough room. So what I'm saying, his guys put it in their arms because they're using so much gear. They can't use synthol and gear. They have to use their body parts.
Okay, we got 2 questions on this like a week. By the way, we look at old questions because there's so many questions we have to go through. We'll let Tony go in a bit, but we have to have Tony back on because we have a lot of questions for him too. But a couple of people asked this. So JMote65 says, Boston, give us your thoughts on Ben Chow. What? For some reason, there's a lot of hatred toward him. They said,
my God.
Listen to the question.
I know who's asking that question.
No, there's 2 of them. He says, why he dresses like a pirate, cheap Johnny Depp? And why he thinks overcoming diarrhea to do a weak-ass amateur show is so special.
Dude, this guy is so funny. He emails me all the time, and dude, it's not just him that thinks that.
No. Another guy said, DJ Stanko said, just roast Ben, please. LOL.
So, dude, this is true shit. So that Ben Chow guy, he's acting like he won the Mr. Olympia and overcame like cancer, but he actually just overcame diarrhea. I
didn't know he had diarrhea, by the way. I thought he had a kidney issue.
And he's making posts like he won the Olympia. You would think this guy won like the biggest show in America, the way he's posting, but he literally won some rinky-dink show in Texas, and he literally overcame diarrhea. and like, dude, and he was going to back out of the show. He went and made a post saying he's not competing because of the diarrhea and all this shit. And then he shows up on the show day, ends up winning the show, and he thinks he's like fucking God now. And I used to like Ben. Like, I used to be like, this guy's a cool guy. But ever since he got on Fluod's podcast, like the publicity that he's got, it's gotten to his head, dude. The guy's physique is terrible. I mean, it's terrible.
Well, I don't. By the way, the reason I'm laughing, I didn't read the message. I didn't read the diarrhea thing. I didn't read the question before I told it to you. We can't see it yet, Tony. I didn't read it, so I read it. I was like, diarrhea. I didn't know what the. But I have a comment on this. So I have nothing against or for Ben, but I do. I used to. Sometimes I still watch Fuad show if that guy is on it. And sometimes I used to see Ben stuff, and it's funny, like on Fuad's show, because it's the guessing game show, and nobody knows what they're doing, so they just guess. They get questions and they guess randomly. Whenever they trying to guess and can't guess well, they point at Ben. They're like, "Hey Ben, you're a coach. Tell us. You have a degree in biochem." And then Ben says incorrect shit each single time. He never ever says anything right.
He doesn't know. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
It's pretty funny. Okay, so
he's very. I've never seen him before. So yeah, is he very tall? He looks very tall.
Yeah.
He's very tall, yeah. And he's strong. He's a strong guy.
He's my height.
Oh, he's 6'2"?
Yeah.
But he's strong, but like he doesn't look like a bodybuilder. He's
strong, but he doesn't have no muscle to back it up.
Like no. So this is a good question. Seth Master said, "Would Boston ever consider being a Gorilla Mind athlete?" That's Derek's company.
What's Gorilla Mind? What does he sell?
Pre-workout supplements, nootropics, a few other things. It's a supplement company, basically. Very legit.
I would be obviously willing to try the stuff, and if it's good, I would be willing to promote it. But I don't do the whole sponsorship thing.
I should send some to you. They're good products. I helped create the nootropic one.
I should try the nootropic then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a great nootropic for somebody that doesn't want to take 20 things. Like if you don't want to take 20 things, you want everything, but it's going to be more advanced in the future. There's many more things that.
Well, yeah, I prefer that. I prefer the simplicity.
Caleb says, "Will you ever compete again? Remember, you need to reject the pro card."
That would be the goal, man. But I would have to get on dialysis for me to even think about that.
I literally think that you're planning that. I've been thinking about it. You're planning to get on dialysis, and then
once I'm at that stage where I need dialysis, and I do the 4-week course, and I learn and I do it at home. Dude, I sit at home all day anyways. I'd probably hook myself up to that 8 hours, clean myself like crazy every day, and I do it. I would do it.
What's his name did that?
I heard that on dialysis, that shit's better than a diuretic. I heard that shit dries you the fuck out.
You know,
I would do it the day of the show just to dry out.
What's that guy's name who did it? Who's used to be? Amin says he was his client, but he did because
Don Long.
Don Long. Yeah. Don Long did that, huh? You competed well, right?
Yeah, man. They said dialysis is like a diuretic. Like I would do that like the night before the show.
Red says, "Why are calf muscles so shit now in the pro ranks?"
I don't think people focus on them as much because they don't think they're judged. You know, I don't think they focus on their calves, but
I think that they used to do implants really often. Like a lot of people, I think, had either implants or were injecting their calves.
My best friend got calf implants.
That is some ridiculous. I would never do. I'd never get an implant. I can't even stand women with implants.
Yeah, I could never do it, man. I was like, I can't believe you're doing this when he did it, but they look good. But I was like, dude, I couldn't do it.
Do they hurt when you? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he was in bed.
I just think it's a matter of how much size they're putting on up top, and the calves just, it's really hard to put that size on. I mean, so the bigger the upper body gets, the smaller the calves look, but their calves are still pretty big if you put a tape measure up to your own calf.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. This is an interesting question from a guy in Egypt. Umar Aesthetics says, thoughts on PGF2, PGCL, I don't know what these are at all, Luteolase. These seem to be trending heavily nowadays in the Middle East, especially in Egypt.
Tony, have you tried the PGF2?
Yeah. So these are all the same thing, basically. They're just prostaglandins. They're just inflammatory. Prostaglandins. Directly into the muscle. So yeah, I experiment with these things and have them in the fridge. And I think the most interesting video I did was a video of my girlfriend. I injected Rose, or AKA Werewolf, in the shoulder with it. And she was vomiting and she had diarrhea and she's in so much pain. She's rolling around on the ground. And it's so funny. The video is so funny because I'm like, I'll pay you to do this experiment, right? So then I bring out the 1,000 baht, which is $30, and I hand her the 1,000 baht, and she's so excited because she loves money so much. So it just goes to show, like, the amount of pain and what misery I put her. It only lasts 30 minutes. You have explosive diarrhea for 30 minutes, vomit for 30 minutes, whatever, and then it's out of your system, and you get this nice muscle growth and this increased insulin sensitivity, and the muscles become resensitized to androgens, and the muscles become resensitized to growth peptides. I mean, it's great, right?
And you lose hair, by the way. Be careful. That's one way to guarantee hair loss. Prostaglandins. Okay.
What the goal is, you're trying to get it in the muscle and not have it go other places, but you can't help some go other places. And when it hits the digestive system, then that's what happens. So she's rolling around in pain. I hand her the 1,000 baht and she starts laughing and she's excited. It's like the pain just disappeared. And then she said, "Can I do another one?" He wanted another $30 to go through 30 minutes of just brutal pain. So if she wants to do it for $30, you can imagine bodybuilders willing to go through this for more muscle growth, worth more than $30 to them, right? But I propose a not quite as effective alternative, but it accomplishes the same thing. This is why I use arachidonic acid sometimes. Although careful when you using it for what, because I think
upstream to it.
I was using upstream. I was using it right before Rona, and I think the inflammation from the arachidonic acid contributed to my severe reaction to Rona. So something to consider. But the idea is you have more arachidonic acid in the muscle. When you train, your body naturally converts it to the same exact compound we're talking about, prostaglandins, which has all the same benefits. Of course, it's not to the extreme amount of injecting it right in the muscle. But the thing about prostaglandins, you got to inject it in every muscle. You want a bigger chest, you got to inject it in your chest. You want shoulders, you got to put it in your shoulders. It's not systemic. I mean, a little bit, right? Because you
use an insulin syringe, right?
Yeah, insulin. 29 gauge. half-inch needle so it can get into the muscle more. I mean, but if I were going to use it before, like, a few days before going on stage or something like that, I'd be putting it much, much deeper, of course. I mean,
you know what I was thinking, Tony? Okay, so my experience with that shit was terrible, but I kept using it for weeks because I thought I was going to make me bigger. So Leo, I still have a box of this stuff if you ever want to try it. But
no, I do not want to try Plasticon.
Shoot it, right? You shoot it in the muscle you trained. I shot it post-workout, but the thing is you're supposed to shoot it like 2 to 3 times a day. I never got to that extent. Right, Tony? You're supposed to do it multiple times a day, right? Exactly.
So that's why this thing is just totally miserable. Like, who wants to do that? Yes, it works, but
there's no fucking way I'm doing it more than once a day, right? So people were like, you got to do it multiple times. Like, no, I'm doing this shit one time post-workout. Post-workout, I would get home, have my shake, have my stuff, and then I would shoot that shit. And within fucking 5 minutes, I was shitting my brains out. And then
that happened to you too?
Oh, dude, shitting my brains out. And it's immediate. Like, Leo, you could feel like your stomach's empty and you don't need to shit. And when you take that shit, you got to shit everything out, right? Stuff starts coming out of you that you didn't even think you had in you. and then after 30 minutes after it's over, Leo, it's the best feeling in the world. You feel like you're clean, you're pure. You feel fucking amazing. Like, you feel literally legit sick for 30 minutes. And then once you clear out, you feel fucking good, like refreshed.
Europhic?
Yes, you feel hella good.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Wait,
I don't think it works. I really don't, Tony. I don't think that's going to do spot injections if you could only do it once a day. I don't think it's going to help.
Technically, it's very short acting.
Scientifically, you would think that if it increases local inflammation, growth factors will then be sent there and something might happen. But I'm certainly not injecting a prostaglandin myself. By the way, little arachidonic acid doesn't affect it as much, the prostaglandin synthesis. It's a little bit upstream. So it must be way less noticeable, right? For you, Tony?
Arachidonic acid benefits are noticeable. I mean, you feel the inflammation in the muscle. You feel the extra.
But you wouldn't feel like sick and stuff.
But no, it doesn't. Because it's not turning into prostaglandin in the digestive system. So what's happening, you're injecting the prostaglandin, it's traveling your bloodstream to your digestive system. When you take arachidonic acid, it's stored in the muscle. When you train the muscle, it stays in the muscle. It doesn't leak out into the bloodstream and go to the digestive system.
Tony, I was reading if you shoot it sub-Q, it helps with fat loss too. Do you believe that's true?
Yeah, prostaglandins do also burn a lot of fat. I know that. I didn't see it myself, but the science says it absolutely does.
Hey, we'll do one last thing I want to talk about before I let you guys go. I know you're both tired, but I wanted to ask because Bostin, before the kidney stuff happened with you, you told me that you were going to try follistatin, right?
I did. I love follistatin.
Well, you spent a lot of money on that. What happened? What was the effect of the experiment?
I used follistatin before, but I only used 100 micrograms for 10 days, and I get great results on it.
You did really? What happened?
I grow quick on that stuff.
No way.
But I'll tell you what, Leo, I used it the first time ever, I think, in 2015. And that's when I got the best results. Was my first cycle ever. Everybody in the gym were like, dude, you're getting bigger every day. And I put on like 10 pounds. But ever since that, it doesn't work as good. But before my kidneys failed, I got like a ton of myostatin inhibitors called ACE. I know Tony knows what it is. And I got a bunch of them. And I was going to run a bottle a day, 1 milligram a day for like 20 days. But I obviously never got the chance to run it. But I got better results from ACE compared to follistatin.
Did you use either of these, Tony?
Yes. I didn't run it for long enough and enough. And I never knew exactly what protocol to run. I was always waiting for the science to hopefully evolve on it more. But I was also disappointed in what I did use, just not having a miraculous effect like I hoped. You know, I was just like everybody else. I read the rat studies and I see the rat put on, double its body weight in muscle, right? Mm-hmm. Or the cows type thing. And I thought, okay, well, that's what we're going for here. And that is nowhere near what it does. I mean, I
saw your video. You were getting like welts.
The ACE one was quite painful. The follistatin, no, but I don't think was painful. But the ACE was really painful. I was in Dubai actually when I first shot ACE, and I was in my calf, and I was walking around limping all over Dubai. And Dubai is big like Las Vegas. There's a lot. If you're going to walk between things, it's a long walk. So imagine me limping around on ACE.
Well, Tony, one day I should take you around Dubai. It's different when you visit and you have somebody from the city that knows it very well. Yeah, I could show you a different kind of Dubai. Yeah, you know, as a foreigner, when you visit, it's a little bit different. But last question, actually, I wanted to ask Tony. You've been traveling around the world, experimenting with different things. Have you ever gotten access to pharmaceutical Increlex? Because I know you had the IGF-1, but
I went to Oxygen Gym. I thought for sure that's where I'm going to get it, and I was in with the whole crew. I'm training with Regan Grimes. I'm training with their main coaches, and I'm talking. Yeah, so I have access to everything, and I'm like, I want Increlex, and one of the guys, one of the pro bodybuilders there is like, yeah, I can get you Increlex, and he tried to get it for me, and he couldn't get it for me. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, actually, nobody uses Increlex here. We all use IGFLR3.
Really?
I'm like, what? I'm like, that's what bodybuilding nerds use. I didn't think the pros used that. I thought, you know, I mean, I know IGFLR3 works, but I didn't know they were really using it at that level. So that's what Oxygen Gym was actually using.
They use it at high doses, though. At high doses.
Yeah, high dose of IGFLR3 is a completely different game than low dose.
We're talking about like what? Because I've seen it on a top guru's protocol at like 200 to 300 mcgs a day.
One of the bigger bodybuilders that I know of was taking like 400 micrograms per day. Yeah, I mean, you lose sensitivity to it fast, and that's probably incredibly unhealthy for growing everything in the body and cancer and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. But that's how he put on, you know, more muscle than he ever had before, and he was already huge, and he got even more huge. Like IGF is what can take you from being huge to being like bodybuilding freaky huge. That means
one bottle will last you 2 workouts.
Supposedly in the early 2000s, you know how Dennis James, a lot of other people were huge in the early 2000s, like 2002 to 2000 or 2001 to 2003. Like the GH15 guy on the forums used to claim that at that time they had access to something called Kicktropin, which supposedly had IGF-1 mixed with something else in it. And that's why everyone was so big. And that's why everyone's size suddenly dropped a little bit after like 2003 because they lost access to it. By the way, on this topic, last thing I want to say, I've been studying a lot about how children grow taller, just out of curiosity. And there's a lot of debate among academics about, you know, because normally, for example, if you have a GH deficient child, they give them growth hormone and they give it to them, they test their blood tests and they'll raise the dose according to their IGF-1 level. But they don't do this with idiopathic short stature, which means just randomly short children. But the question was, how much does growth hormone directly cause height increases, as a linear height increase compared to IGF-1? So I've looked at studies. There were studies using early on using Increlex by itself. And they found that the children grew less tall than when they used growth hormone by itself. But the children grew the most tall when they combined the two together, which is really fascinating to me. So I was thinking, how did you get Increlex? Just out of curiosity. But it seems to be something that is impossible to source. I don't know where the pharmaceutical companies are keeping it.
Here, I'll tell you more about the Increlex. So yeah, there's certain countries you can get it from, and it's not super hard, but it has to be refrigerated. And so now you got to deal with shipping on ice through customs. And if you do get it in your hand, it's actually not expensive. Yeah, you might pay $600 for a bottle. I can't remember. I think it was something like that. But the bottle lasts a long time.
Interesting.
You know? So it's like it's actually not as expensive as people make it sound. It just sounds expensive because you got to buy a large supply up front is what my memory is.
Fascinating. That's very interesting. Well, guys, it's such a pleasure. Tony, I think, you know, you should be a regular guest sometimes on this show because this is a very fun discussion. I really enjoy it.
I like our 3 different angles. We have like, you know, actually you're like the intellectual one and Bostin's like the hardcore guinea pig and I'm kind of like in between, and it's kind of like a triad, and it's very interesting, our different experiences and perspectives. I mean, between all 3 of us, we can figure a lot of stuff out because if one of us doesn't know about it, we can educate the other very quickly because we speak the same language. And there's a lot of things where we all know something about it, but once you put it together, it really becomes something. That's
true. I think it's a very good dynamic. And also we're all upfront and honest about things, which is always important. Boston and I sometimes we have somebody on and afterwards we're like, he was very commercial. Like he wasn't trying to be honest, you know? So we always feel that way, but you're very straightforward, even though you're charismatic, which some people mistake for something else, but you're very honest. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Have a good night. Talk to you guys soon.
Slow, friends, freedom, pioneers of human evolution.
Bye, boss.